Hello everyone, this is Julia. Thank you so much for joining me on my craft room adventures. Today I have a picnic barbecue themed box card to share with you, which I made for my dad for Father's Day, which is on the 21st of May here in Germany. I used the Picnic Bunnies digital stamp set by Isabel Cristina for this one, because I thought the theme was just perfect. I thought I would use this opportunity to show you how I cut out my normal stamp sets and also the digital stamp sets. Isabel Cristina actually provides a easy print version where you just basically have one PNG file to print, but you can always use the individual images and scale them however you like. I went with the easy print version, just printed this on a regular piece of paper and put this on my rubber cutting mat. I turned on the machine, I line it up with the left side, and I press the button on the right top to load the mat. Then, since I want to scan the image, I say scan, and then choose direct cut because I just want to cut it out. Recognition mode, since it's a black and white simple picture, I choose black and white, and then press the play button. You want to make sure that you have enough space behind the machine so that the mat can fully go through and back out again. Now it's finished scanning. Then it takes a little bit of time to recognize. Sometimes when you have trouble that the machine won't recognize, you can always choose the color recognition mode, which is even slower, but it's usually a bit better. Now I'm just zooming in to show you. I don't know if you can see, but it recognized all of the images on the page. There's a little outline. Now I'm cropping the part that I want to cut for this, because I only need one set for my card that I'm doing. I will leave the rest for later. And now it's time to add the outline to the image. The outline distance I usually use is 1 millimeter, which is about the same as you would get with a die. Then you press OK. You have everything ready to go. Then you can say cut. Takes a second to process. And then you just say play. I sped this up, I think it's ×8, but I just wanted to show you how the machine is actually doing it. It just runs once around every image and you will have perfectly cut out stamps. Now it's finished. I can unload the mat. It will give a little pop-up, are you sure, because you can never line it up the same again, but since my images are all cut, I can always scan them again if I need to, so this was fine. Now I'm just removing the sheet of paper to show you that all the images I wanted are cut out, and there we go. Now it's time to color. I printed the digital stamps onto Neenah Solar White paper, and I'm using my E50 markers, still really loving those. So my darkest color is the E55, then blending that out with E53, E51 and E50. I'm only, for my first layer, I'm using E55, E53 and E51, leaving the lightest areas just white. And then for my second layer, I'm going in with all 4 colors and coloring in the center of the bunny's face. For time purposes, since I've included quite a lot in this video, I will only show the coloring of one of the bunnies, or for the other images, just one of them, because I color them all the same basically. Then with the E51, and then filling in the rest with the E50 and blending everything together. I use the E55 on the bunny's nose, and I'm using some R20 marker on the insides of the ears, the cheeks, and I'm blending that out with the E50. Also using the E50s for the wooden handles of these little tools. And unfortunately I forgot to record the metal coloring. I just used C7, C5, C3, and C1 for those, for everything that's metal on the card. Then I really wanted the grill to be like a vibrant red, so I'm using R39, R37, R35, and R32. And I really like this combo. It's more of a pinkish red in the center, but it's really, really pretty. So just... the R32 doesn't blend that well with the R35, so I just did a little bit of the tip to tip on the edges so that I can get a nice blend. The lid turned out to be quite difficult to hold when it's already cut out, so I just used a bit of post-it tape to stick it down so that I would have more of an area to grab. Again, going in with the R39, then R37, R35, again with the R39, R37, R35, then a little bit of the tip to tip to get the blend, and then fill in the rest with the R32. I went a little bit over with the red, so I'm just using the cool grays to cover that up. I'm just coloring in the... I really need to look up what that's called, I'm sorry. I just thought it was just like a little spike with vegetables and, I don't know, like a meatball on the end. I really had no rhyme or reason to do this. But for the greens, I'm using YG17, YG13, and YG11. Then for the burger patty, I'm using E29 and E25. I'm also adding, for the second one, I tried adding E23. It was such a small area, it doesn't really make a big difference, but for the little meatball, you could tell, so I added in the E23. Now for my burger bun, I'm using E23, E21, and E00. And I'm also using the E23 to add some dots so that it looks like the little sesame seeds on there, just to give it a little bit of texture. Coloring in the second hamburger, just the same with the E23, E21, and E00, sorry. Now to color in the apron, I'm using B90 markers. I started out with the little pocket because I wanted that to be darkest, so I'm using B97, B95, and B93 on that. And for the rest of the apron, I'm just using B95, B93, and B91, just to make sure that there's a difference between the pocket. Just going around basically the rim of the image, so that the center is lighter, just like I did with the bunny. Now for the little picnic basket, I'm just basically adding shading to the left side and the top, just so that it gets a bit of a dimensional look. Not really paying attention to light source or anything, just so that it looks a little bit 3D with the E25, E23, and E21. I just wanted to make sure that I use a different tone of brown marker to make sure it looks different than the brown of the bunnies. And now filling that in with the E21. For those, I only did one coat or one layer of color because I really didn't think it needed much more. I forgot this little area. That's part of the top of the basket, so I'm just filling that in. And I'm also using the same colors on the cork of the wine bottle. I'm using YR23, YR31, and Y21 for the baguette. I'm using BG70 and BG10 for the glass, and YG17, YG13, and YG11 for the bottle. I just made sure to use the same colors I already used on the burger for the little salad on the patty. And I'm also using the same color as I used for the glass on the little label. Now it's time for the ink blending. I die cut the Scalloped box card from Fawn, and I cut the back panel out of Bristol smooth cardstock just to add it on there. And I'm using tumbled glass and broken china distress oxide to create a sky backing for my barbecue scene. And for the grass panels I cut with the grassy borders from Fawn, I'm using twisted citron, mowed lawn, and a little bit of pine needles distress oxide, just to give it a bit more definition at the top. I cut 3 of those, and now I'm also adding splatters of pine needles and mowed lawn, just for some added interest. I die cut the main part of the box die twice, and I wanted to add a little gingham pattern to it. So I'm using the Hello Bluebird gingham pattern stamp and Abandoned Coral Distress Oxide to stamp it. I just covered the stamp in the oxide and I'm carefully pressing down. It's not perfect, but for this purpose I really didn't want it to be. I wanted it to look like a bit of a distressed picnic blanket, and I thought it really turned out pretty nice. Doing the same thing for the second panel, just pressing down, being sure to not to shift the paper while it's on there. And I also went ahead and stamped the sentiment, or part of the sentiment, the happy from the Mice on Ice stamp set from Fawn in Abandoned Coral Distress Oxide ink, and I cut it out with a coordinating die. But on the gingham pattern it really wasn't showing up. And since the die doesn't come with a shadow backing, I decided to make my own with a Brothers scanning kit, and now I'm going to show you how. So just like we did before, scanning the image, I stamped just on plain white cardstock the happy in black ink. Now it's scanning just like we did before. It's recognizing. Now we say OK. Frame the part of the image that we want. And then we add the outline. This time we add 2 millimeters because we want it to be wider than the regular cut image. I'm carefully removing this part of the cardstock, and I'm adding in another piece. And now we can cut it, and then we have a white shadow for our word die. There we go. And you can do this with basically any stamp or any word die, and that shows up much better on the background. Now it's time to stamp the second part, the Dad Day, which is from the Superstar stamp set by Fawn. And I just die cut a strip of black cardstock with the simple banners, I think, also from Fawn, and I'm using some Versamark ink to stamp it. I'm using the white opaque bright super fine embossing powder by Wow, and I just heat set this. Now it's time to assemble my box. I added some score tape to all of the flaps. Then I realized that I didn't want my box card to have the front and side flaps, so one of the pieces I'm just cutting out both. Just at the score line where you would usually fold. And for one, I just cut off one of the pieces, the short one. I have to admit I was kind of holding my breath while doing this, but just went really slowly and it worked out fine. I guess with another paper trimmer, not a guillotine one, would have been easier, but this worked out fine anyway. Now I'm just reinforcing all of the score lines because with the pattern I really couldn't see where they were. So I'm just taking my bone folder, reinforcing all of them just to make sure that it will fold nicely. I'm just removing the backing of the score tape, lining both pieces up, flipping it over. Now it's time to add my inside panels to the short side on the right, and I'm just removing the backing paper and lining them up. It didn't really need to be a super perfect level at the top of the scene because I wanted to add the grassy hills anyways. I removed the backing on the other side and just folded the card shut. Doing the same thing for the last part, moving it back and forth, and that forms our box. Now I'm just using liquid glue to add our sky panel. Just making sure that the top is covered with glue so that you won't have anything popping off the back. Just lining it up. And now I'm adding in the grass panels, one straight to the background and the other to the inside panels, so that we have a little nice spring scene for a barbecue, which we actually did have today, since I'm recording this today on Father's Day and we actually had a barbecue. So it was really fitting, this card I made. I'm just trimming a bit off so that it fits nicely. I always do this. I put the panel in and then fold the box because sometimes it snags a little bit, and then you just trim off a tiny slither and it usually works fine. There we go. This is the base of our box card done. I die cut lots of white tiny little clouds from the Santa picture window card die, just out of plain white cardstock, and I'm just using the quick stick tool and some liquid glue to adhere them to my background. This one was kind of fiddly because I wanted it to be behind the blades of grass. Now I'm adding the little spatula to the master chef, and also the little thing that I don't know the name of. I will Google it after this recording, I'm sure. Also adding the burger into the grill. Or is it barbecue? It's barbecue, isn't it? And then also adding the lid. I'm sorry for my lack of words this time around. Often I get confused because this we actually call a grill, and it's weird to call it something else. So the barbecue, now adding liquid glue to that. And now just adding the lid as well. The lid wasn't really holding that well, so I just added a little bit more glue. Now just figuring out the placement, and I'm using glue dots to add in the images. I found that I really like using glue dots for this because when you don't press down really hard, you can still change the position in your box cards or shadow boxes or whatever, and they don't add as much bulk as like a foam tape would. And I like that I don't ruin the panel when I want to move something with liquid glue. So this is actually really nice. And there we go. At this point I thought I was done. I actually thought of adding the picnic basket and the little bottle and glass later, but I added it to the coloring at the beginning because it just made more sense there. But that's why I'm adding the sentiment, basically, for you in the middle. I'm just adding the happy word die to the shadow that I cut for it, and just using liquid glue to add it to the box. Just trying to figure out where my sentiment strip with a dead day would go. I tried to lay it flat, but then I realized with the pattern I really couldn't see where the center of the front was, so I had to do it like this. Usually I would do it lying down because it's easier to press, but in this case, with the busy pattern, I had to do it like this. And I'm just using some foam squares to add the Dad Day part of the sentiment, and I'm just using my scissors to trim off the excess. And this is when I realized that it still was a bit empty. I needed a few more things on the first two little hills. So I decided to use the picnic basket, the wine bottle and glass, and a little tray. Unfortunately, in the stamp set, there's actually just a bunny that's holding the tray, which I didn't use for this card. And to get the tray, I kind of had to cut up the bunny, which I'm really sorry for, but I just needed the tray. Sorry, little bunny. Here I'm just figuring out the placement of everything. And this is just a few seconds to you, but it really took me quite a while to get that right. I tried out a few different elements because the set does come with a lot of them. But even though it took me a while, I really like how it turned out, so I think it was worth it. And since my dad doesn't actually speak English, I decided to add a little bit of a German sentiment for him. Für den besten Papa, for the best dad. I just added it on a little sentiment strip. He's also getting like a separate gift card that I wrote the message in, so I didn't need it to be on this one. So usually I would just add like a note section on the back, but in this case I really didn't need it. And that finishes off my Father's Day card. I really like how it turned out. The digital stamp set by Isabel Cristina Stamps is just so pretty. And I also really love the pattern stamp by Hello Bluebird. This was actually my first time ever using digital stamps, but I was super pleased with how easy it was to figure everything out. If you have any questions on how to use the Brother Scan and Cut or any other questions like this, or suggestions that you would like to see videos on, please leave them down below. I'm always happy to help. I hope wherever you are, you're staying safe and healthy. And thank you so much for watching. On screen, I will link to 2 more videos that may interest you. Have a wonderful day. Bye!